But it's just amazing what you're doing. You can put high def video on this type of a thing. And I need to check the sound. I got the wireless on.
We should just talk.
Yes, okay. If you could first introduce yourselves there.
Go ahead, Lois. Ladies first.
I'm Lois Brick. I was born in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and have lived in Madison for the last 45 years.
Okay. Your maiden name?
Oh, my maiden name was Dart, and I'm related to all the Caters in Green Bay because my mother was a Caters, and there are hundreds of them.
Oh, yes. With an S?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And just for what neighborhood did you grow up in? Or what parish, should I ask?
Oh, the parish is more like it. I lived in Preble, the first block in Preble, but because my father had gone to cathedral grade school, I had no other choice but to go 2 miles to school and go to cathedral grade school. So that's how I grew up.
Okay. Ed, how about you?
Well, my past, or my beginning, I should say, was about as different from Lois's as it could be. I was born in Chicago, Illinois in 1935, and my father was on the railroad until they lost his job because he drank. Then we moved all over the Midwest, and we ended up in the Pacific Northwest, and came back to the Midwest in Green Bay in 1945.
Where'd you live in Green Bay?
I live on the west side of Green Bay, out at the intersection, more or less, of 9th Street and Ridge Road. And I went from grade 4 through 12 in Green Bay, having lived additionally several different places in Green Bay. Always on the west side. We didn't mingle with the east siders.
Okay, so is it West High, East High?
Yep, at that time.
Not entirely. West High, Lois went to the St. Joseph's Academy.
Yeah, I went to St. Joe's.
Now
The
part
Academy.
of the,
Part of Notre Dame de la Baie.
Right.
Okay.
But you had the East Side, West Side staring at each other?
well, that was,
Not really, but it was because of the Catholic high school that brought in kids from all over Green Bay. The first West Siders I got to know were the people that I went to high school with. Other than that, we didn't. I don't think the East Side. I mean, the East and West High School fought each other in football and basketball, but I don't think we mingled a lot, right? Did you know a lot of
the
East
Fox
Siders?
River split the two sides of the city fairly effectively.
Ed, could you move your chair over? The light's coming in really good on her. They
Okay.
more light on you.
Okay,
How's that?
Oh, that's
You
wonderful.
can't get any
No,
closer.
you can't get any better than that.
isn't it wonderful?
To change the rating on the film.
Right.
Okay, I want to focus the conversation on, of course, cardboard college.
Cardboard college. Yes.
So the period, let's just put 1957 to 1964, just as there's obviously some
Okay.
fuzz. And tell me how you happened to go there, and what was it called? UW Green Bay? I saw some paid newspaper.
It's called the extension.
The extension. They didn't even say UW. I mean, I'm sure that was in there, but it was called everybody called it the extension.
Yeah.
So,
No, we have an extension building in Green Bay today, but it's not like you go there for.
no,
So-
I'm sure. UW extension is really all over the place, and they're doing a lot of stuff from here, all over the state of Wisconsin. But at that time, it was a 2-year college with 10 rooms.
I could perhaps fill in some of the details because I worked for University Extension during my career. But
I wonder if I could turn on a light here. It's just you're kind of in the shadow here. Is there a light?
it's over here.
Yeah. Well, you want this one on?
Yeah, why don't you turn that
Try
on?
that one, Lois.
Okay. Otherwise, I can shut the front
No,
curtains.
that's the curtain. I need more light.
Oh, you need more light.
Yeah, and is there anything
Reach
over
down,
here?
hit
Right,
that switch
yeah,
right
hit
next
that
to
one.
it, Paul.
Yeah.
And we got a few more.
That's much better. That's much
Okay.
better.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, so you want to explain how that worked? The extension had
Yeah.
college courses and
The university had, at Madison, had two extension divisions. One was general extension. It had an urban orientation with a strong presence in Milwaukee and Green Bay and other population centers throughout the state. Then the other arm of extension was ag extension, and that is the county agent and other kinds of agents depending on the agricultural strength of the particular counties. And so when I got out of the Army in 1956, I had the GI Bill, so I knew I was going to go to college, and I elected to go my first year in September of '56 to Cardboard College, the Extension Center in Green Bay. And I went there for a year, could live at home, and the next year I transferred to Madison. That was my introduction to the university.
okay, cardboard. It was built out of cardboard.
Well, it was a World War II surplus building, and I suspect that the exterior paneling was asbestos.
Yeah.
Paneling. It was weatherproof. It was 1 story high. It had a very institutional look about it. There was nothing beautiful about Cardboard College. And it had, I don't know, there weren't any more than 6 or 8 classrooms, I think.
Yeah.
And the classes were night and day, and the students came and went according to their jobs and whatever.
It's multi-rooms. It's not just one big room.
No, it was a lot of separate rooms.
They were classrooms.
And they had a lab, because they taught science and,
I took chemistry.
yeah. And I took some science, but I can't remember what one.
Was it right next to the stadium?
Yep, it was right in front of it.
It was between the stadium and Baird Street.
Yeah,
And
it was right along that.
Otherwise defined as the parking lot for East High School. Well, it was in the block of Baird Street that went from the entrance to East High over to the East River.
Yeah.
Had it been a military building before?
No, not military.
Yeah. I always now, and this is funny because I don't know if my mind is working right or not, but I always think of it more as a Quonset hut.
Like this?
No,
It wasn't round though.
It wasn't that hemisphere. It was rectangular in elevation.
Yeah.
But I don't know the origin of the building, but it's gone now. That's for sure.
Yeah.
But even on the Madison campus, there was temporary buildings built during World War II, most of which have been removed. But when I went to transfer to Madison as a second-year engineering student, there was a building at the intersection of Breeze Terrace and University Avenue that was a very, very similar construction. It was asbestos siding, and with about a half a dozen classrooms.
What would you guess the dimensions are? How many rooms?
Of what? Cardboard College? Well, it was two rooms deep. It had a central corridor in a long axis. And it had, I don't know, there couldn't have been more than 4 or 5 rooms going the other direction, on both sides
on either side. And there was one big, I still remember having an English class and it might have been on the, facing north, it would have been on the west side of the building, and it was kind of a big room. But there were labs and there were, French classes I took were tiny, there weren't that many people in it, so.
What kind of desks they have, like elementary school? They were in rows?
You know what they were? No, that wasn't what they were. Most of the, I remember, I don't know, you're too young to remember this, but in a lot of college classes, there was a wooden chair, and then it had kind of a thing in front of it, and
Desk.
a little desk, so you could do your writing right in front of you. And that's what I think we're in most of the classes, except the one,
The lab.
except the one big class that was there.
The chemistry lab had a lab at the front of the class, and then tables for the students.
How many students would be in the building at one time?
Oh, hard to say.
Yeah, that,
It would be, if there were 6 classrooms, and that is in general the number I recall,
okay.
they'd all be going at the same time, and they would probably have anywhere from 10 to 30 people in them.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah. And I started later than Ed did. I had been married and divorced and had a child. And I had been working at Northern Paper Mills, which, in the office. And I decided if I was going to support this kid, I was going to have to get a college education. And I started at the extension at Cardboard Tech in
Cardboard College. Dear.
Cardboard College in must have been in 59, 60, 61.
That might have, that's too late.
No, yeah, 58. And I went 2 years. And again, the reason for going to the extension was I lived at home with my parents. My mother and dad took care of my son. And it was reasonable. I could hold a job and still go to school. So it worked out pretty well for me. So, and then I transferred to Madison my junior year.
I mentioned last time, and that in my writing about history of the East River, it was often mentioned that somewhere 30s, 40s, maybe even in the 50s, that the river smelled so bad that they had to close the windows in the high school when the weather got anywhere warm. Was that an issue? Did the
My
river stink?
sisters, both older than me, referred to the East River as the Stinky River.
Yeah,
And they used to have to hold their nose when we'd cross over the bridge.
yeah,
And it was probably related to the ag wastes that made their way into the river, and the river had very little flow. So I'm sure the stuff would go anaerobic. And that smell is, with all the dairy agriculture
yeah.
in the East River watershed, that smell is not nice. It's very
Yeah.
offensive.
Yeah.
But that was a very much a part of my memory of growing up in Green Bay.
Yeah, but and all the rivers, whether it was the Fox or the East River, the paper mills were all on them. The big coal factory. What was the big coal thing that always had the big
The Sea Rice Coal Company.
Sea Rice Coal Company would have and I'm sure a lot of that stuff all went into the river at times.
Well, did you study biology there at all? No.
No, I did not.
Chemistry? I just wondered, did the environment get mentioned in the classes?
No.
No,
Not a word.
Yeah.
I mean, that was so accepted in the mid-50s that it was
Yeah.
just the way it was. That
Yeah.
smell was dollars and money and jobs.
Yeah, and a good example of this and how it was never much talked about. Growing up as a kid in Green Bay, Bay Beach was a very popular place for families to go for picnics. I must have been 7 or 8 years old, and you were not allowed to go swimming at Bay Beach because it was so polluted. And as a younger child, I remember going out there and seeing there would always be a lifeguard and right on the sandy beach. And then probably and I can't even remember the timeline, but we were still going on picnics with our family, and we were not allowed to go in the water anymore.
So what year, I don't know, when were you born?
I was born in 35.
Okay.
So this must have been, it could have been 45, 44, 43. I mean, I'm sure there's some history that will tell when the swimming beach at Bay Beach was closed. So,
My story was I fished. And I moved to Green Bay when I was 45, in 1945, so I was 10 years old almost. And I would fish. We'd either go to Dutchman's Creek and catch bullheads, or we'd go to the Fox River and catch yellow perch. And we'd eat those yellow perch, even though the waters were very polluted. But the pollution was not of a sanitary nature. It was of the mill waste, which just stripped the oxygen out of the. In those days, the paper mills used 1/2 of the log for pulp, and the other half they dumped in the river. And it just stripped the river of oxygen in general, but there are always bays or backwaters where there is oxygen, and the fish swam to that higher oxygen and survived. Some of them did. There were, well, probably the biggest fish kill I can remember, the alewives that showed up, and that was later, that was in the 60s.
Yeah.
And they died by the millions. The whole lower part of the Fox River was silver and stinking, because alewives are a very rich fish, oily fish.
Okay, what was the atmosphere? Was it like a high school in terms of your perception?
Well,
feeling?
I think I made a lot of friends there. In fact, I didn't meet Ed there. I met his brother there. His brother was going to college at the same time, and I met him there, and other people from the west side of Green Bay, which I had not known before. So and it was all pretty friendly, and everybody was pretty nice. I was lucky to be old enough to go to Van's Glass Bar and get a beer with the guys every once in a while. I think that's closed now.
So
It used to be right on Main Street.
I would say that the extension experience for me was very much different from high school, because there were a lot of veterans that I hung out with, you know, and we too would go out. We had a night drawing, engineering drawing class. We would retire to a tavern someplace and drink some beer afterwards.
Yeah,
So it was very different from high school.
yeah,
I just think of the contrast. Then you both went to Madison.
yeah,
So was that a big leap?
Oh God, yes.
yeah. It really was. I was fortunate that I wasn't in a big dorm when I came to Matt. You know, I was so used to knowing all my friends. I lived in the French house for the last 2 years of my college, which had 13 people in it, plus a house mother. So I got to know all these people very, very well. And
The French house then was a 2-story house at the corner of University and Mill Street.
yeah, which is now the big chemistry lab. But that was, and so we got to know, fortunately, we got to know the professors because they'd come there for dinner and we had to speak French at all times. And so I got to know a lot of people. My only bad experience at the university was I was in one of my French classes, and I still get, I suppose if I looked at my transcript, I could tell you the professor, but he was very proper, and he said, "Where are you from?" And in the French class that I took at the extension, they never talked about Green Bay. They talked about Baie Verte, which is the French name for Green Bay. So he said, he was asking people, "D'où venez-vous? Where do you come from?" And I said, "Je viens de Baie Verte." And he looked at me and he said, "That's Green Bay." He got really upset that I said it in French. So
I'm just thinking of something because the